Hello, everybody. Welcome to the library. It's a pleasure to have you here in this medieval week. A lot of going on this week, even the inauguration of our new president. But to get things going, here to present these two erudite medieval or medieval erudites. Sorry, I sometimes speak in Spanish. Who are going to talk about the Bayeux Tapestry. And it's really something that we were looking for, to have these two experts joining forces, around a piece of cloth. So,
What a dream.
anyways, without further ado, Mr. Rob Lagueux, the Vice Provost, and Mr. Ross Bresler, Professor of Liberal Arts. There you go. All right. No.
Thank you, Pablo.
away.
Thank you all for coming out at the beginning of Medieval Week. As hopefully you know, the Liberal Arts Department is hosting a giant day of all things medieval that is going to take place on Thursday in the 921 building. There is going to be Popeye's chicken. What's that? It is the most medieval of chicken. There are going to be a lot of interesting talks related to the Middle Ages. There'll be music. There'll be presentations. That will conclude with a showing of Monty Python's Holy Grail at 4 o'clock in David Friends. So a lot of medieval things happening this week. And knowing that we were going to be in the Middle Ages, as I was trying to think of something that I could talk about to kind of add to Medieval Week. The Bayeux Tapestry has been in the news a lot over the past few months. It was announced over the summer that this thing that you've probably never heard of, but are going to learn a lot about this afternoon, is going to be traveling from France to England for the first time in its 900-year history. That is, for the first time since this thing was made. It is being lent to the British Museum in London. So if you find yourself in London, England, any point between September of next year and the following July, this is truly going to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience to see the Bayeux Tapestry in the British Museum in London. So what is this thing, this massive giant thing that was made in the 11th century? So in the 1090s, this thing was made. First, a little data for you. The tapestry is 230 feet long. And about 20 inches high. Across its width, there are 626 people, 500 plus animals, 37 ships, and 33 buildings that populate the Bayeux Tapestry. Technically, it's not actually a tapestry. This is one of the myths about this thing. Technically, it's an embroidery. So the difference is, if you want to go look at some real tapestries, you can find them all over the place, including at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum down the street. Here's a detail of one of those lovely 17th century tapestries at the Gardner. The difference is that when it is a tapestry, the design is woven into the entire thing. The design is the textile. An embroidery is when you apply or stitch into a support designs. And that is the case with the Bayeux Tapestry, technically the Bayeux embroidery. There are 10 different colors of wool, thread that have been woven into the linen cloth that makes up the Bayeux Tapestry. We have to do a little bit of a guesswork in terms of who commissioned this thing, and also who actually made this thing. Again, we're talking over 900 years ago, this object that we are looking at. We are fairly certain that it was commissioned by a guy named Odo of Bayeux, and you're going to learn a lot more about Odo from Rob in a moment, the half-brother of William the Conqueror. That is Odo, by the way, over here on the left. He's labeled up above. And it is most likely woven by women. That is absolutely the greatest likelihood, and by English women. So technically, even though we call this thing the Bayeux Tapestry, technically it should really be called the Canterbury Embroidery, but it doesn't have the same ring to it. If you wanted to sort of come back and revisit this object that we're going to be looking at together, the Bayeux Tapestry Museum in France has an extraordinary website where they have an entire reproduction of the tapestry that you can dive into in its entirety, sort of horizontally. I decided to save you the effort because I'm going to show you the entire Bayeux Tapestry. And because it's in France, I thought I would give it a little French je ne sais quoi.
Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. C'est payé, balayé, oublié. Je me fous du passé. Avec mes souvenirs, j'ai allumé le feu. Mes chagrins, mes plaisirs, je n'ai plus besoin de balayer les amours avec leur trémolo, balayer pour toujours. Je repars à zéro. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Car ma vie, car mes joies, aujourd'hui, ça commence avec toi.
Incredible. Bravo.
So that is the entirety of the Bayeux Tapestry, all 230 feet of the thing. So what is actually on it, right? What is the story that is being told? So we're going to set the stage a little bit of events leading up to where the Bayeux Tapestry begins. And at its core, the story is a story of three English kings. A king called Edward the Confessor, a king that is called Harold Godwinson, and then King William of Normandy. We are going to do a very simplified version of this story together this afternoon. It is really complicated. These people are related, they're half-brothers, they're cousins, they're brother-in-law. It's a very complicated story. But at its core, the story goes like this. So Edward the Confessor, right, in 1051, is going to name William of Normandy as his heir. So Edward the Confessor, the king, has no children. So he names his relative, William of Normandy, as his heir. Right? At the time, Earl Harold Godwinson is sent by Edward the Confessor, the king, to Normandy, right, to the north coast of France, to affirm that William will be the next king. And Harold Godwinson goes to France, swears an oath, as we'll see, that he will support William to be the next king of England. This is where the Bayeux Tapestry picks up. Right? So it begins with King Edward, right, there in the middle, sending Harold Godwinson, now just an earl, to Normandy at the far right. Harold will swear over holy relics while in Normandy that he will support William as the next king of England. Rob is going to have a lot more to say about the importance of swearing over holy relics in a moment. Then Edward the Confessor dies. In January of 1066, he is buried in Westminster Abbey, which had just been consecrated. That abbey is still there today, right? So it was consecrated the year before Edward the Confessor dies. And on your next trip to London, you can still go and visit the tomb of Edward Confessor inside of Westminster Abbey. So the king is dead. Harold Godwinson decides he is actually going to be king, that he is not going to follow the oaths that he had given. He is crowned as King of England, and this is where the trouble is going to begin in earnest. An ominous sign is going to appear in the sky here on the Bayeux Tapestry after Harold announces that I have gone against these sacred oaths. That ominous sign in the sky, here's a detail of that ominous sign in the sky that says star next to it. That is Halley's Comet, which flew across England earlier in 1066, about 6 months before the climactic battle that's coming between Harold and William. Fans of comets, you have to wait until 2061, which will be the next present of Halley's Comet. So William learns that Harold has himself crowned king, and he's furious because the crown should be his. Everyone had agreed. So he puts together an army, right? Constructs a fleet in France, sails that fleet across the English Channel, and then battle ensues in the southern part of England. The climactic battle is a battle that is called the Battle of Hastings. It happened on the 14th of October in 1066, so not so far away from where we are now. Hastings, you can see, is on one of the narrowest crossing places between the north coast of France and the south coast of England. Battle ensues, a lot of bloodshed on the Bayeux Tapestry, more bloodshed on the Bayeux Tapestry, the battle between the Norman French and the English. Eventually, Harold is going to get killed on the battlefield in kind of an extraordinary way, with an arrow right in his eye. This is one of the most famous scenes of the Bayeux Tapestry. I don't want to tell you that it's probably not true, and I also don't want to tell you that we think that the arrow was added centuries after the tapestry was made, so I'm not going to tell you that, because arrow in the eye is much better than any other alternative. So Harold is killed. And then the tapestry ends. So even though it is 230 feet long, we are missing the end of it. And historians have tried to kind of speculate, hypothesize what is probably going to be, or what would have been on the end of the Bayeux Tapestry. Here is a recreation of what it would have looked like by a textile artist from 2018. Most art historians agree that it is going to end with William being crowned as King of England. It sort of begins with Edward the Confessor crowned King of England, and this would be the perfect bookend, right? Ending with William being crowned. But again, this is reconstruction, what we have on the screen here. If you cannot get enough of this story, there's actually right now on the BBC kind of a historical recreation of William the Conqueror, Harold Godwinson, Edward the Confessor. That show is called King and Conqueror. And so if you want to dive more into the history of this, that is on right now. So that's what the thing is. What was it for? What was the function of this incredible object? And for that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Rob, who's going to take over from here.
Thank you, Ross. Okay, so.
Woo!
Oh, Ross will be back. Ross will be back,
back.
yeah. Okay, so this is what, one of the most enduring mysteries of this is what, we're not exactly sure what it was for. We do know that it was associated with this cathedral. It was actually associated with the prior version of this cathedral. This is the Gothic cathedral that was built over the Romanesque cathedral that was in place when the thing was actually made. So we don't actually know exactly what it looked like, but it's a little bit shrouded, like a pizza cloth, like that. Shrouded in mystery because we don't really know anything about it until about 300 years after it was made, where we have this cathedral inventory, because cathedrals, like any other place, occasionally need to know like what they have in their attics and the like. They make a list, and one of the things says, also, we have a very long and narrow linen of such embroidery of images and inscriptions representing the conquest of England, which is stretched around the nave of the church on the day and through the octave of the relics, which is very interesting. So there's a couple of particularly interesting pieces there. We'll focus on two of them, the first of which is the stretched around the nave of the church. Some of you may know what the nave of the church is, but this is the floor plan of, again, this is the existing Gothic cathedral, not the Romanesque one, but the premise is the same. So these are the sort of four major areas of the church, right? You have the narthex, which I think is one of the greatest Latin words you can possibly know because it sounds so cool. on the one end, this is the most public space where people would often hang out, conduct business, gamble, etc. The far other end is the choir, the most sacred space where only certain ecclesiastical officials can go and sacraments are conducted, etc. The nave is this piece in the middle. You would think of it now as where the pews are or where the chairs are to sit on. In the Middle Ages, typically these were just open with people would stand. But so this is sort of the most, it's somewhere in the it's the most public sacred space in the cathedral, if that makes sense, right? So it's not the sacramental space, but it's also not where people are just hanging out and drinking, which is a thing that happened in medieval cathedrals all the time. So we think that it was probably something like this little fuchsia line here, right? So we think the tapestry was probably extended around that area. Bayeux Cathedral now, this is what the nave now looks like. Again, not what it would have looked like in 1066, but and so the cathedral did this kind of cool like projection thing to show what it might have looked like again in the Gothic cathedral. So that's pretty cool. Let's go back to the inventory though. So here's the other interesting piece of it, that it is hung around the nave on the day and through the octave of the relics. Well, what is that about? Let's talk about relics. So in the Middle Ages and even to today, relics are the holy remains. They can be objects or body parts of holy things, right? So it could be the bone of a saint. It could be a piece of the cross. It could be a fabric of the linen that wrapped Christ's body, that sort of thing, right? And these are very important for two reasons. One, they're very charged sort of spiritually, right? There's a belief that they have some inherent power in them, kind of like supernatural power, right? They can sometimes heal. They have, they're charged in certain ways, right? The other important thing is that because they're charged, it's nice to visit them and touch them and be with them. So having really good relics means that people want to come visit, to see the relics or touch the relics, and that's good for the economy, right? And so cathedrals often, clerical communities would celebrate the day on which they would call it the translation of the relics. So this is the day when we translated, often meant stole, but received the relics of whatever it might be, the true cross. We'll see a few other examples, like the bone of this holy person. So relics are really important for a variety of ways. Oftentimes clerics would parade around sort of on like fundraising quests with the relics in what are called reliquaries, which are just fancy boxes, often golden and ornate, to hold these relics, right? So here's a couple famous examples. This is the Shrine of the Three Kings at the Cathedral of Cologne that is purported to contain the relics of the Magi, right? The holy wise men who visited the Christ child in the Christmas season. Here is one of several skulls of Saint Valentine that exist, and again, like there's reduplication of many of these, right? Because Saint Valentine, that's a big ticket item, right? And so like you might have multiple skulls of Saint Valentine. If any of you have been to our Valencia campus, you may know that the Valencia Cathedral has the Holy Grail, which is great news if you're looking for immortality, I guess, right? Like that's where this is the cup of the carpenter. So Bayeux, like any other cathedral, had its relics, and it had the relics of Recife and Ravenna. Anyone know anything about them? Anyone in the room? Who's your favorite of the two? Anyone? Right. No one knows anything about these two saints, right? These are 5th century martyrs. This is a stone. They were martyred. This is like 100 miles from Bayeux. According to legend, like the divot in the stone is where their skulls were bashed in when they were martyred. So that's fascinating. And these relics eventually made their way to Bayeux. They are no longer there, by the way. And so when we see Harold swearing an oath to Duke William in Bayeux, he's got his hands on these two little reliquaries, right? Again, they don't exist anymore, and they probably never looked like that anyway, but in those were the relics of the cathedral. And swearing on relics is equivalent today to like putting your hand on a Bible, right, when you swear. Like there's something inherently more meaningful. It implies more, I don't know, more promisey, right? It's the most promisey thing you can do is to swear on these relics. So let's talk a little bit about what the Bayeux Tapestry is about. So I want to distinguish between what happens in the story and what it's really about, right? So for example, Romeo and Juliet, what happens in the story is that they fall in love, there are difficulties, and they die, right? What it's really about is that teenagers often make stupid decisions, right? Like teenagers are rash, etc., right? This is what it's about. Likewise, Oz, Dorothy meets a band of misfits, they travel to Oz and murder a witch, right? Like that's what happens in The Wizard of Oz, but really what it's about is some semblance of, some combination of these, right? Courage, friendship, home, our greatest strength lies within us, blah, 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 right? So when we see Harold making this oath, let me go back here. This is super important because this is, I think, probably one of the central 2 panels in the whole thing. Because when we see then that, as Ross showed, when he takes that arrow in the eye, or however it is that he ends up getting killed, what immediately happens is, right, Harold swears on this oath, swears this oath on the relics. Then he decides that he's going to be king, and what happens immediately? He is killed, right? So here he is again, getting killed, and the English are turned to flight. The end, right? Like that's the end of the tapestry. Like we think there was probably a coronation of William at the end, but really all we see is oath, death, English are turned to flight, end of story, right? That's kind of a weird way to end the tapestry if it's really about William's coming to power and being a great king or what have you. It's a little bit weird, particularly since there's a bunch of things that aren't related in this story that seem fairly important if it were just about how great William is, right? Like we don't learn about his claim to the crown, about like how Edward actually, like named him to be the heir. We don't learn that a bunch of English leaders actually defect to the Norman side. We don't actually see his coronation. We probably did, but like it's not central, right? If anything, it's the last thing. So that's a little bit weird. Even weirder is that we see, and it's even labeled as here, the English and the French fell into battle together. But the English are never disparaged, right? It's just kind of like this crazy thing happened, these guys fought, and then Harold died. And there's nothing about the English being defeated. It's kind of just, it's Harold's fault alone, right? So this then, let me come back to what's it all about. So ostensibly, it's about the events leading to the Battle of Hastings. But really, that's what happens. But really what's it about is Harold broke an oath, and that's why he's dead. And even more so, it's not just that Harold broke an oath. He broke an oath on our relics, right? Our 5th century saints, these guys you've probably never heard of, but they are powerful enough that a would-be king of England who breaks an oath on them gets an arrow in the eye, and his whole army is routed, and that's the end of it. So, again, we don't know for sure who commissioned the creation of this, but as Ross has already intimated, right, here's Odo just sort of hanging out with William in the middle, which is pretty striking, right? And again, Odo, this is the Bishop of Bayeux, the guy in charge of the cathedral, in charge of all the relics, who's also, by the way, half-brother of William the Conqueror. So when we're talking about this being stretched around the nave on the day of the octave of the relics, I should say, by the way, the octave is the 1 week after the Feast of the Relics. So that's octave because it's the 8th day after. Really what we're saying is, this is Odo saying, check out my relics, come and visit. So I'll turn things back to Ross to take it home from here.
Thank you, Rob. To sort of emphasize a lot of things that Rob just shared with us, in the war between William of Normandy and the English, William is going to have the blessing of the Pope in Rome. Right? This is going to be a papal-sponsored invasion of England. And in part because they were able to argue that because the sacred oath on the relics had been trespassed, that made this a holy war against William Godwinson, right? Not just a political war. So I thought we could spend a little time talking about the later history of this thing, how the Bayeux Tapestry became a symbol for lots of different people in lots of different ways, interestingly. Yes, please.
A holy war against Harold?
A holy war against Harold Godwinson. This was a papally sponsored war by the Normans with the sort of trespassing of the oath as the central crime in that. Okay, so we know that the tapestry was once lent to the Louvre when the Louvre was known as the Musée Napoléon, when Napoleon is in charge of France. It was there for 3 months. We actually have a lovely letter that survives. When the Bayeux Tapestry was sent back to Bayeux from Paris. This is a letter from February of 1804. I'm sending back to you, that is, we here in Paris, sending this back to Bayeux, the tapestry. The first consul, that is Napoleon, was very interested to see this precious commemoration of our history, That is, the Bayeux Tapestry is a French historical document of our history, and congratulates the townspeople of Bayeux on the care that they have taken to preserve it over 7.5 centuries. The French, and Napoleon in particular, loved the Bayeux Tapestry, because when you think about it, it is a French people conquering England. This is a really good prototype to kind of lean on. And the Emperor Napoleon had a lot of plans to invade Britain. None of those plans are going to come to fruition. This is one of the great frustrations of Napoleon's career, his inability to defeat the British. Napoleon is not going to be the only leader who wants to conquer Britain and will be unsuccessful in doing so, and also not the only leader who wants to use the Bayeux Tapestry as a kind of role model for a successful invasion of Britain. Someone else who really wanted to invade Britain was the Nazis. What? And believe it or not, the Nazis were able to turn the Bayeux Tapestry not into a story of the French defeating the British, but a story of the Aryans defeating the British. This is the brainchild of the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, and his quest to own the Bayeux Tapestry, to bring it to Berlin. Himmler had founded a research institute in the mid-30s as the Nazi power is rising in Germany. And essentially, it was a research institute looking to prove and demonstrate the Aryan heritage of the German people. All sorts of different mechanisms were employed, all sorts of scholars were brought in. And their argument, what they found, is that William of Normandy was not French. That William of Normandy was Norman, that the Normans get their word, the name Norman just means Norsemen, the people of the north, and that is because in their origins, they had in fact been Scandinavians. They're Vikings. Vikings who became Frenchmen. And the Vikings are Aryan. Therefore, William invading England is an Aryan domination of England, right? Not a French domination. And this is going to be a role model for the Germans. Right? The Nazis are going to send a special team to Bayeux to study the Bayeux Tapestry. Here they are in 1941 to take photographs and to research. Eventually, the Bayeux Tapestry was going to be moved to the Louvre Museum. That is the Nazi-controlled Louvre Museum. It's moved there in June of 1944. As the Allied armies are coming south through Normandy towards Paris, the Bayeux Tapestry is now on display in the Louvre Museum. June 1944. Himmler then decided in August that as Allied troops are approaching Paris, we need to get the Bayeux Tapestry out of the Louvre and it's come to Berlin. He had an idea of where it was going to go, how it was going to celebrate Aryan heritage in Germany. Unfortunately for Himmler, and fortunately for us, the message where Himmler told the Louvre to pack this up for preparation to Berlin, was intercepted by code breakers at Bletchley Park in England. And when they decoded the message, Himmler's coming after the Bayeux Tapestry, they were able to inform French resistance members in Paris who managed to get access to the Louvre, and they hid the Bayeux Tapestry in the basement of the Louvre in zinc-lined crates, and the Nazis didn't find it. Once Paris is liberated, they were able to get the Bayeux Tapestry out of the basement. They put it on display in the Louvre. And then later, at the end of 1945, it was sent back to Bayeux. We have recently learned that while the Nazis were studying the Bayeux Tapestry in 1941, they sort of took a little bit of it home with them, like just a little bit of the Bayeux Tapestry. This was only been learned in the past year. There was an exhibition in Germany in March where they put on display that little tiny fragment of the Bayeux Tapestry. Newly rediscovered, a missing fragment is returning to France. And when I say little, I mean little. So it's this little collection of bits here that was labeled as part of the Bayeux Tapestry in 1941 when they removed it from the object itself. That is going to be put back on the tapestry as part of its most recent move. The symbolism of the city of Bayeux and the relationship between northern France and southern Britain is emphasized even further when the Allies here liberate the town of Bayeux. This happens in June of 1944. And if you visit the city of Bayeux today, one of the places that you can visit is the British Bayeux War Cemetery. So this is where British soldiers who fought to liberate Bayeux are buried. And on the monument, it's got this incredible inscription on it to kind of bring all of our thoughts into connection with one another. The monument reads, "We, the British, we were once conquered by William. Now we have set free the conqueror's native land." Right? That is, the British have come to France to save the French, right? Even though we were once conquered by people from France. The sort of history in reverse aspect of this, not a French invasion of Britain, but a Britain invasion of the northern part of France. Here are Allied troops landing on the beaches of Normandy in June of 1944. The connections with the Bayeux Tapestry were not lost on contemporaries when this happened. We can gauge that by this incredible cover of the New Yorker magazine. This is from July of 1944, which shows us all of the characters from the Norman landing, from the invasion on both sides, recreated in the style of the Bayeux Tapestry. Again, this is from July 1944, so this is about a month or so after the landing in Normandy. It's incredible. Well, while you're all gathered here, there are some other things on this tapestry. Let me just do a quick age check here. Everyone is over 18 years old. Everyone is a mature, consenting adult. So there's some other things on the tapestry. And, oh, yes, uh-oh is right. Rejoice! The Bayeux Tapestry with knobs on. What do the tapestry's 93 penises tell us? Didn't see that coming. That's right. There are 93 identifiable phalluses on the Bayeux Tapestry. They come in equine form. There are 88 of those things. You're welcome. Good afternoon. And there are 5 human members on the Bayeux Tapestry. You are looking at the lower left down there. Now, art historians, scholars sort of debate why they're all there. Is this a symbol of the virility of the soldiers? Did the naked people in the margins comment upon the scenes that they accompany? There's a lot of back and forth as to why these things are there to begin with. But the biggest point of Bayeux scholarship, controversy, and one that I'm hoping that we as a collective are going to solve today. Are there really only 93 of these things on the tapestry? Because a hot button topic in Bayeux scholarship this year, are there 93 or are there 94? Historians dispute Bayeux Tapestry penis tally. I just said that out loud. After lengthy debate, 2 Bayeux scholars at loggerheads over whether dangling shape depicts dagger or the embroidery's 94th phallus. So we are going to vote on this. Here is the thing in question. So we're going to do just a casual poll. Is it the 94th or is that something else? All right, so first of all, is it 94? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Not 94. Not the 94th. We may never know. Yes, please, Alex.
Can you show us the other human phalluses so we can compare it?
I mean, I've got a detail in a sec, Alex. Don't worry. You made time to come out. I'm going to show. I got the goods for you. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Please, you have a question?
The fragment that the Nazis took. Did
Yeah.
you check that one for any?
Is there a secret? Maybe that's why Himmler wanted it. That's a good question. The next time that you are in Reading, England, a wonderful place to visit is the Reading Museum. Big Victorian pile of a museum, inside of which is a scale copy of the Bayeux Tapestry. It was woven by hand in the 1880s and is the product of an organization called the Leek Embroidery Society. The woman standing in the middle is named Elizabeth Wardle. She's the head of the Leek Embroidery Society. So the question is, when they make their copy of the Bayeux Tapestry, do we get all the goods in Victorian England circa 1885? And the answer is no, we do not. So here is, so happy, Alex? This is on the Bayeux original. This is what the nice ladies of the Leek Embroidery Society have done with them. So when you go to Reading, you know, if you're offended by this, go look at the originals in the Reading Museum. There are, in fact, a lot of different copies of the Bayeux Tapestry. This is a particularly interesting one. This was made for sale, kind of a sort of Bayeux Tapestry swag. This is a giant unfoldable black and white photograph that has been hand-colored. And you could buy these things, and essentially you would kind of consume them sort of the way you consume a Torah scroll, right? That you'd be able to see the entirety of the 230 feet of the Bayeux Tapestry. Again, this is a photograph that's been hand-colored. There are 2 copies of this at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. There was one of these things that just went up for auction 2 years ago at Christie's. It sold for $28,000. And the copy that just sold at Christie's had been previously owned by and put up for sale by the estate of Charlie Watts, the drummer of the Rolling Stones. Yeah, Berklee College of Music. All right, here we go. Other copies include, for your viewing and auditory pleasure, I give you E pluribus Wigham. All right, so, sorry. So if you have a chance, this thing is on the move as we sit here. Again, the announcement was made in July. They're renovating the museum in Bayeux, which gave them an opportunity to have this thing travel to England. It has been given, at least by most conservators, a clean bill of health for travel. This is not universally agreed upon by conservationists, but people who feel that the object is too fragile to travel. The French state says, at least as of August, it is ready to go. As we sit here, this thing has already been packed up. It was just packed up last month. And I thought it would be interesting to have a little video showing what it was like when they removed it from the museum and began packing this thing up. It's incredible. So this is from last month.
An extremely delicate operation, coordinated to the centimetre.
C'est reparti? Ouais. Prêt?
Moving the Bayeux Tapestry for the first time in 40 years, it took some 100 people and over 7 hours to extract the piece from its display case before folding it and putting it inside a crate.
Tac, tac, stop.
The 68-metre-long embroidery depicts the Norman conquest of England in 1066, led by William the Conqueror. In July, President Emmanuel Macron announced France would loan the piece to the United Kingdom as a gesture of goodwill. At the Bayeux Museum in northwestern France, some of the tapestry's last visitors were sad to see it go.
The English. It's their history after all.
I'm saddened that it's leaving.
The loan has also sparked controversy among some heritage advisors. They argue the tapestry is extremely fragile and could suffer irreversible damage. In 2020, experts documented more than 24,000 stains, over 9,000 holes, and 30 tears in the artwork. The team was led by this conservator.
Unfortunately, all transport includes vibration, even taking all the precautions. Such a long journey will inevitably damage the work.
The tapestry is set to arrive in the UK in June 2026 before being put on display at the British Museum next September. In the meantime, it's being stored in France in a secret location.
Okay, so pack your bags. September 2026, it will be in the British Museum. And with that, thank you all for coming out this afternoon during Medieval Week. A reminder, Let's Get Medieval, sponsored by the Liberal Arts and Sciences Department, all afternoon on Thursday of this week. But until then, thank you all for coming out this afternoon.